Hey everybody, welcome to the Otherz podcast. I am your host, Stephen Penny. Joining me this week are first, I believe, Floridian, all the way from sunny Florida, Julio Ferrar. How you doing, man?
Good, and yourself?
Not too bad, thank you. Not too bad. You keeping safe out there in Florida?
Trying my best, man. Trying my best. How about you?
Yes, staying indoors here. Keeping safe. Luckily, we don't have the added complication of, gators, meth heads, all those kinds of things I think you have an abundance of out there as well.
All the fun stuff.
Oh, yes. Having lived in Australia for quite a while, I know what it's like having to deal with all that kind of deadly stuff trying to kill you on a daily basis.
For sure.
All right then, so this week we will be discussing Gust of Wind, Pharrell featuring Daft Punk, obviously from the album Girl. It was the fourth single from Girl, but I think it's the first one we're actually discussing on the podcast from that album. So we're doing it in a slightly back to front order. I'll go through some of the stats as usual first off. So released on the 24th of October 2014. As I said, the fourth single from the album. Didn't chart particularly well across the world. It hit number 2 on a certain Belgian chart, the Ultra Tip Flanders chart. No idea what that is. Other than that, France 32, UK R&B number 13, number 79 on the main UK singles chart, and then got to number 4 on again one of these weird US sub charts, the bubbling under R&B hip hop singles chart, whatever the hell that is. Aside from that,
I've never even heard of that.
No, every time I kind of reel these stats off, there's always some weird US Billboard sub chart that comes up, and yeah, I can't imagine how many there actually are out there. Probably hundreds of them. But also, 17 million views on YouTube at the moment. And aside from that, nothing really too much to speak of. It's, from what I can remember of the track when it came out, it wasn't overly publicised or promoed. I remember they did do it on, I think Pharrell performed it on, was it like The Voice or something like that in the US maybe? But bar that, there wasn't too much else promo around it. I guess by that point they were probably ramping down, from the previous promo of the album. But let's have a chat about the video and the song. Again, the video is directed by Edgar Wright. Some people may know that name because obviously nowadays he's a fairly well-known film producer. Funnily enough, here's a fun fact for all you listeners. He's from the same town in the UK that I'm from, Poole in Dorset. Not that I know him or anything like that, but yeah, he was born where I was. But you may have heard of him. He directed, Shaun of the Dead, Hot Fuzz, Baby Driver more recently, Scott Pilgrim. He adapted Tintin for Steven Spielberg. Co-wrote the screenplay for Ant-Man. He was going to direct it and kind of pulled out of it, I think, but he was involved in Ant-Man. He's also previously directed a few music videos for the Blue Tones, who are a UK kind of Britpop group. Then some more I hadn't heard of, the 80s Matchbox Beeline Disaster, whoever that is, Mint Royale, and more recently Beck as well. Actually a very good video for Beck for his single Colours. Julio, give me your take on the video. Let's get your thoughts on this.
Well, Steve, it's kind of interesting, right? Because sometimes you think something that's very well planned out may have just been coincidence, but some of the things that I have noticed, right, being that it was released during the fall, October, right, autumn, that's kind of like the first thing that I get, right? Like seeing when it was released and that time, playing with those earth and rustic tones, right? Like the color scheme. Like that was the first thing that I had noticed, which was pretty cool. Being the song being Gust of Wind, those color tones and when it was dropped, right? I kind of pictured it like, hey, this was really well planned out. But I mean, again, I could be completely wrong. This could be total coincidence.
I think you're probably onto something, and it also ties into Edgar Wright himself in the way he directs. So if you actually, earlier on, I kind of knew of some of the videos he'd previously directed, but if you go back and watch them, they're all on YouTube. All of his music videos have that kind of color palette to them. There's a lot of yellows and oranges and browns and reds throughout all of his videos. And even in the Beck song Colors, which is predominantly blue initially, with I think it's got some white accents and some black background. Again, when it starts switching the color up, yellow is the kind of contrasting and accenting color that's used. So I think it's very much a theme that that he brought to it, and I don't know if that tied into maybe the vision Pharrell had for it, or whether that tied into the kind of release schedule, because they knew it would be released at that time of year. But that's definitely something I noted from Edgar Wright's other videos as well.
Yeah, some of the other things that I had noticed besides those things is what as a director, right? How would he, Edgar Wright would go about with the lyrics and the title of the song "Gust of Wind"? How do you show that visually, right? So, right, you get the opening scene, you see these dancers in long robed wardrobe, and you see it flowing, right? Like that is a visual of the wind, right? The gust of wind. And I'll get, I guess, back to that. But what I see, or I guess related with that, was kind of a little bit of like the Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon kind of theme playing on there. And there was something else that I noticed too, Stephen, is that the trees that they had looked like either Japanese or Chinese maple trees. I could be completely wrong, but it just like how the leaves look, they look like Japanese or Chinese maple trees. I guess, Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, Chinese, Japanese maple trees kind of go Japanese culture and Nego and all those things kind of, to me, had like an extra touch, right? An extra unique touch of who Pharrell is, as that kind of shows that within the video, right? Like that's kind of what I was getting on it. Let me switch from my Bluetooth headphones over to my other headphones.
Technical difficulties here, people. Lovely. So yes, as you were saying about the Asian maple trees.
Right. So besides Crouching Tiger, obviously the Flight and Hero fight scene as well. Like again, like I was saying, there's just like a lot of things kind of being shown here. I guess maybe like little Easter eggs or something to kind of pick up like his personal, like his personality and what his interests are, right? Within the video. It's just really, it's a very Pharrell-like video. And being that, he is a fashion designer and he knows all about color tones, as we both know, being huge fans of the shoes and the things that he puts out. We know how far his color palette goes, and these tones. Sorry about that. These tones obviously easy to see in the video.
Yeah, definitely. And like I said earlier, I don't know if that was something that that Edgar Wright brought to it specifically. Or whether that was something they maybe envisioned beforehand, and looked at maybe who was best to direct it in that way. But I think because of Edgar Wright's kind of previous videos and that whole, all the kind of tones and the color palettes that kind of work through the videos, I think probably it was more from his side of things that he kind of bought that. I assume the guys at IAM either probably had a vague idea of what they wanted the video to kind of be like and represent, but I think from seeing it and knowing kind of Edgar's other kind of work, I think probably the vast majority of it came from him.
I could definitely see that for sure. I mean, from what you're saying, I don't. I mean, even though I know some of Edgar Wright's work previously, right, like his old stuff, having been worked with plenty of artists as a music and sound engineer for many years, how producers go about working with artists, sometimes they make it personable, right? Like they sit you down and they talk to you about some of the things that you like and your interests and stuff like that. And then sometimes, right, they request that they have full creative control over, whatever the concept or visual. So yeah, I could totally see how with his previous projects, those themes continue to be his own. So for sure, yeah, I can see that.
Yeah, and one thing I noticed, and it's not something I picked up until I watched the video a few times on repeat earlier, is the Daft Punk element of the video. So obviously Daft Punk feature on the track. They co-wrote it. They also provide some of the vocals on the hook via kind of vocode, that typical Daft Punk style. They're not credited as kind of co-producing or adding anything additional there, but we don't know. But it just kind of struck me that the song is it is featuring Daft Punk, but they do literally just appear on the hook, which is the same hook throughout the song. And I think it plays 3 times in the song or 4 times in the song. But if you watch the video, you feel their presence throughout the video. Obviously, they're not in the video. They're represented by these kind of large, I guess, rocks that are in the shape of their helmets.
Yeah, like these.
What I would have expected is for the camera to for that to be there and for them to be acknowledged in some way. But as they're not physically there, I would just expect them to acknowledge Daft Punk, once or twice in some kind of way. But, when the track opens, you have the big rocks there, their helmets there. When the chorus hits, those rocks light up. When the chorus hits later, those rocks take off and start flying, and the camera spends a lot of time on them. And then at the end of the track, those rocks kind of lift off into the air, almost kind of going off into space. But then we see that big kind of outline of each of them in their kind of human form with the helmets on, kind of almost like made up in the stars in the sky. It just seemed strange that that much time was kind of given to representing them in the video when they're not actually really there at all.
That's very interesting perspective, honestly. The way I kind of took it all in was a separate representation of the inspiration of the song, where again, kind of like the flow of the robes of these dancers around Pharrell. How do you show the representation of wind, right? And in some of these lyrics, like having enough fuel or gas or what it was, I can't recall the lyrics, but it was kind of like like a force of nature that uplifts and fuels the individual mentally, emotionally, like a force of nature. And that kind of fuel, that kind of gas, they wouldn't be able to get to those limits without that element, that person, or whatever may have you. So that's kind of how I saw the whole representation of Daft Punk with the helmets, then lifting up into the sky, into space. It was kind of like that other thing. Like the lyrics was obvious, or the song itself was obviously, doing some of my research, was inspired by Pharrell's wife. He had a dream about it. He woke up, he told her about it. And obviously with the lyrics, if you reading into it, you can see that it's her who gives him the power to, create and do everything that he does, right? And then for the Daft Punk part, what you're speaking on, I kind of saw that as them doing that for Pharrell for this song and for these projects that they have done, right? Like, in some sort of metaphor, I guess, they are uplifting each other, right? Like they fuel each other artistically, musically, and that's pretty much what I got out of it.
It's funny you mentioned the lyrics there as well, because I kind of remember that same kind of quote or interview, I think, at some point in the past where he talks that it's kind of loosely about kind of Helen, and if you sing the song and read the lyrics, it almost is like an ode to women or a specific woman. But at the same time, if you look at it, I think, or at least when I look at it, I should say, my kind of perspective on this is, as I go through it, it's also like an ode to God. It's actually quite, there's a lot of religious elements in there. And what I kind of get when I was reading back through the lyrics earlier a few times is that, he is essentially saying that, or he's implying that, God is or could be a woman. And, and he's tying his wife into this as well. She is his God almost. Because, it talks about, in the song itself, it talks about, going up to heaven. And, if you have, I'm paraphrasing here, obviously, but if you have the right kind of faith and if you're good, you go upstairs to the sky, I think the lyric is, or something along those lines. And also that line, I put my hands in the air and you were there. Again, it to me, that gives the imagery of people being in church and like a church celebration where people are singing and hands are raised to, in the air to the sky, as they kind of sing to God almost. That's kind of what I got from it, and I hadn't really thought of it in that way previously. But you do actually see quite a lot of Pharrell and N.E.R.D songs where they have that kind of double meaning or double perspective, where they seem to be talking about a certain thing, but you can definitely interpret it in a very different way. And it tends to be with Pharrell, because he's openly very religious and believes in God, etc. I think with a lot of his songs, you can kind of take them that way as well. If you give me 1 second, because I had this similar discussion on a previous episode.
Sure.
And now that I'm trying to find it, my podcast account has obviously locked me out, which is helpful. But here we go. Right, what was the episode and what was the song? I think it was Angel, I do believe. One of our earlier podcasts. Yes, it was. Yeah, Angel. Obviously, the title is Angel, but again, you watch the video and it seems to be about. He's kind of talking to the girl's parents and kind of narrating that story about, trying to form a relationship and stuff with this girl. But at the same time, you can kind of look at it in a different way. And it's like he's referring to her as an angel, and he's talking to not her parents, but to God, and, asking him for permission to, have a relationship with this person. And if anyone is interested in me actually giving a bit more of a detailed explanation on that, because I cannot remember for the life of me what I said, it is episode 17 of this podcast, as I say, of the song Angel, with Elijah McClinton joining me, who may be joining again soon at some point.
It's very interesting. I don't think I've ever been... I never wondered what Pharrell's religion was, like if he was religious at all. Actually, I didn't even know that he was. I knew that he was a very spiritual person. He's, I guess it's easy to say that he is a very positive person, very well put together. You don't ever really hear, like, if it's ever anything bad about Pharrell, it's always like a lawsuit or whatever, and that's fine. But you never really truly hear too much like beef with Pharrell and other people. Like he's very centered being, right? So that I like that perspective. I appreciate it very much, because now I'm going to be kind of looking at it differently, right? Now I'm going to step back from everything that I've ever critiqued, and kind of try to find those other symbolisms, I appreciate that. That's a really amazing perspective. I didn't even know that. I didn't even see it that way.
Yeah, I don't really think it's worth looking at some of his work that way. I think there's a lot of, and that's the kind of almost genius of him as a writer. You know, he's able to write songs that do have that kind of poppy overture that you just assume mean one thing, but they are actually a bit deeper when you either watch the video or read the lyrics and actually look at different ways of interpreting them. Also, I just want to mention on the track here, we talked about the Daft Punk vocals here. Rhea is also on the track providing backing vocals. But one thing I did want to kind of point out, because I know some people have mentioned this to me in the past, and I've seen kind of internet threads about this on Reddit and in different places, and that's about Daft Punk's actual involvement in the track and their actual vocals that are on the track. Now, a few years ago, there were some rumours and Reddit threads and stuff like that of people kind of claiming that Daft Punk didn't actually provide vocals on the track. And there was somebody who had, and you as the sound engineer will be able to kind of, again, chime in on this in a moment. But there was somebody who had kind of claimed to have broken down the hook of the song and been able to kind of synthesize the kind of vocoder part out of the track and just stripped it down to a bare kind of vocal. And they were like, if you pitch it down, it's basically, or pitch it up, whatever it might be, pitch it down, it is Pharrell. It's just Pharrell's voice. And this was a strange kind of simple rumor that kind of caught my eye a couple of years back. So I listened to it and I sort of read through the post that explained it and listened to the kind of vocal samples and this person's audio samples that they said they'd produced and synthesized from the original. And I was like, oh yeah, that does actually just sound like it's just Pharrell being vocoded and layering it on top, maybe 3-4 times or something. So what any Pharrell or Neptunes fan does, they messaged the person that recorded the track. so I hit up Mike Larson, who recorded and engineered the track.
Was it not Nathan Gozaski?
No, Mike, and it was Mike Larson that recorded it with Drew. With Drew. Andrew Coleman. So they both recorded and engineered the track. So I reached out to Mike and I said, random question, here's what I've read and all this kind of stuff. And he was like, nope, it's not true. Like, one, his explanation was, one, you can't technically do that anyway. You can't, you can't break down a vocoded piece of audio and resynthesize it back to its original. It's not, as far as he was aware, it wasn't really possible. But then at the same time, he was the man in the room actually recording this. So if anyone's going to know, how it was recorded and who's actually there doing it, it's that man. And his explanation was, yes, Daft Punk were there, did record those vocals, but there is Pharrell's vocals also layered in there as well. So if you listen carefully, you can also kind of pick the kind of Pharrell tones out of there as well. But just to kind of quash that internet rumor that has been circulating around for a little while, I found that kind of quite interesting.
Well, you know what? Something that you just brought to my attention that's quite interesting are the engineers and people who were in the room that recorded the song, right? I actually understood Nathan Guzansky, or Mick, as they call him, his nickname, was the engineer, right? And that would have led me to kind of go into this other conversation of like what the feel or the vibe of the song and the music. And obviously it's neo soul, pop funk, R&B, But knowing some of Pharrell's known, not influences, but admiration for other artists like Michael Jackson and Quincy Jones and Marvin Gaye, that's kind of what I got out of it, right? Like, this is kind of his version of what these kind of projects would have been, in a way, with his own touch. And Mick, Nathan Guzinski, he actually engineered for Michael Jackson and Quincy Jones. So I kind of just paired those two together, and I was like, well, that makes total sense, right? Like, this kind of new age, modern, neo soul, pop funk, R&B track or tracks is kind of giving me that, what maybe a modern Michael Jackson song would be, or somebody who would be taking that crown, right? Like, we don't. I know that a lot of times in culture, or in groups, we like to compare people, whether it be in sports or music, like who's going to be the one taking the torch, and at this moment, I don't think there's really anybody that I personally would think that holds like the king of pop. But I mean, arguably, I mean, if I had to choose somebody, I would think Pharrell, right? Like, musically and sonically, how timeless a lot of Michael Jackson's songs are. I think that me personally, I believe that Pharrell is trying to accomplish kind of those kinds of achievements, right? He wants to achieve something that later down the line would then maybe even possibly would flatter him, being compared to a Michael Jackson. Like, hey, you are this person, or you're the new this, or something along those lines. That's why it was really interesting when you told me those others engineers' names. I was like, man, that throws out my idea out the window completely. So I'm going to definitely have to just be a little bit more careful in my investigation here in the future, for sure.
I'm just gonna pull up the track info here. Yeah, so Mick was involved. He did the mixing on the track, from what I can see.
Okay.
But
yeah, mixing doesn't really have too much to do with the actual process, right? Like, when you're recording, mixing is after recording, right? So
yeah,
for the most part, at least.
But yeah, editing was done by Drew, recorded by Mike and Drew, and arranged by Mike, Drew, and Pharrell as well, by the looks of it.
Yeah, so yeah, again, that theory, that thought process, out the window. But totally fine. I mean, again, that allows me to kind of just rethink a couple things on the song. I mean, what did you get out of that? Like, when you hear some of these songs, whether you like it or not, and you see the different direction that Pharrell is going with a song like Gust of Wind, what are the kind of vibes? Like, what is similar to maybe previous artists or iconic artists to you? Like, where do you see it kind of going?
With the Girl album, I'm not too sure, because it is such a kind of, and like it is with a lot of Pharrell stuff and N.E.R.D stuff, it's an almost kind of very eclectic mix. And I guess, the comparison, I guess, would be kind of later Michael Jackson, Prince type stuff, where you have R&B, hip hop, jazz, funk, rock and roll, many other kind of genres, all kind of fused in there somehow. But as a standalone kind of album, I'm not sure I could really pick a kind of direct comparison or anything like that. It was obviously a very different direction for him at the time, and I initially wasn't overly keen on the album, shall I say. But it's an album that has definitely grown on me, and I do actually quite enjoy listening to now. But yeah, I'm not too sure if I could or would compare it to something else.
No, for sure, and you're right. Like, being that he loves being so unique and being one of a kind and standing out, you're right. Like, it is a very eclectic project, right? Like, trying to put something on it, like label it as a project in its entirety, would be very difficult. For me, just for the song alone, I kind of got like a super throwback soul approach, kind of like the Temptations, My Girl kind of thing. And again, like a lot, it just kind of felt like there was a lot of influence there of these people that you were naming, right? And, you know, Marvin Gaye and like all the genres that you were saying, right? Like there's little bits and pieces in there where he put it all
Yeah.
together and obviously made it his own, as Pharrell does. But yeah, I mean, like yourself, I wasn't too keen as well when the album first dropped. I was kind of I had to step back, like, whoa, this is a Pharrell project. What's going on here? But yeah, over time, definitely, there are some songs that I do enjoy listening to for sure.
And I have to mention the kind of one big standout thing for me on this track, and what I do really, really like about it, is the real, well, it is the strings basically. You know, there's a full orchestra playing in this, arranged by Hans Zimmer as well. Obviously, he was working with Hans Zimmer at the time on the I think the Despicable Me stuff around that time. So there's a Hans Zimmer string arrangement in there. There's 11 violinists and numerous other string players, and that's give me any song with either really big strong horns or really big strong string sections, and 9 times out of 10 I'm in love. So that's kind of what really pulls me to this track. It's probably not one of the strongest Pharrell tracks, but I personally enjoy it just because of all of those strings that are involved in there and the way it's arranged and the kind of whole orchestra that's involved in it. And then you tie that in with the kind of Daft Punk side of things as well, and you bring that kind of slight funkier, more electro side as well. I think it ties together really, really nicely.
I'm glad that you brought that up, because that's actually one of the other reasons why I got this very Quincy Jones kind of feel, being that, for those in the know, Quincy Jones is a composer, right? Like his whole life, with symphonies and orchestras, and that's kind of how I also took in those strings and horns, and myself included, right? 9 times out of 10, I'm gonna enjoy the hell out of it, right? So yeah, that's kind of how I kind of led myself to get into that zone, that thought process of Michael Jackson, Quincy kind of thing, that soul vibe, but again with a modern touch, like you said, with all the electro and the Daft Punk stuff in the background and the vocoder. Very, very much Pharrell, but again, kind of bleeding through some of these air quotes here, inspiration from other artists and producers and stuff like that.
What else did I have to note in my notes, as it were? I guess a very quick mention on the kind of styling there. You've already touched upon the wardrobe of the dancers, the bays as they were called. I absolutely fucking detest that name. It's awful. But Pharrell's styling was very low key for this one. There's no kind of BBC IceCream branding, which we were starting to see again around that time. Some of the Happy videos and versions he had some on, some of the other videos he had, but nothing there this time. The only kind of branding was obviously the Adidas jeans, which I don't think ever got released or anything. I'm assuming they were kind of custom made for him, because he did spend a year or year and a half wearing those jeans almost endlessly. With the kind of Adidas sign on the back, and obviously that was near the start of his initial Adidas sneaker deal that he had with them, clothing deal. But yeah, aside from that, he's got a pair of like tan boots on. They're not Timberlands, but I can't quite tell what they are. There's a kind of a blue jumper with bleached parts on it. Again, like a yellowy, almost orangey colour, tying into the whole kind of colour scheme as the boots are as well. And then the hat as well, which is a kind of off brown grey kind of buffalo hat, which obviously he was sporting around that time in every video and public appearance going. But then, aside from that, which is a fairly, I guess, normal outfit. But then on his jumper, he's got that big kind of safety pin type thing attached to his jumper, and I have no idea where that comes from, what it signifies or represents, whether it's just some random kind of fashion piece from somebody, whether a stylist thought it represented something. It was just I think a slightly strange addition to the outfit.
Yeah, and you know what? Well, I can't wait for after we discuss the song that we could kind of touch on some of those things, and what he has done for like Chanel and Louis Vuitton and all those other companies in those collaborations. It definitely does look like, to your point, like maybe somebody at Chanel or one of these high-end fashion brands may have gifted him a one of one or one of few like pieces. Those pins were very strange. I am in agreement with you on all that. And you know what? You're right. I didn't see any sort of these brandings, like you were saying, like BBC and stuff like that. And then obviously the jeans was probably the only thing, but I didn't pick up on that right away. What I did pick up on, however, was the branding of "I am other." In the lyrics, there's a lyric towards the end that says, "Writing away that electrified mothership other." And I kind of associated that with the "I am other" branding, and that was just like one thing that I guess popped out to me. But you know what? If you don't mind, Stephen, I'd like to kind of go back to your statement on Pharrell in a lot of his songs, but speaking on this one, referring to women being God or God being a woman. Because I have some notes here, and now that I'm looking at it, they were completely separate to that thought, but now that I'm looking at it, it kind of seems like they may have been, like they tie into it, right? So like I had said before, the gas, right? Without the gas, Pharrell can't get to these amazing heights and accomplish these amazing things. It's kind of like you said, if you were to look at it in a more religious way, it's kind of like he's saying this female God, right? Without that wind, that force of nature, or this force ushering the air to power him, he can't do it, right? But then the wind and the air is always around and is always by his side. So again, kind of, I mean, if you start thinking about it, that's what kind of God is in religion when you go to church, right? Like they say that God is always with you. He's always with us. He's always by your side. God could give you power to do amazing things with, having faith in God. You could accomplish anything. So, with what you had said and some of the notes here, it's starting to make more and more sense to me as far as like that thought process goes. And I just wanted to kind of bring that up and say that, because it's as I'm seeing it happen literally right now, I'm just like, wow, that's freaking nuts. That is freaking nuts.
Yeah, exactly. I think even if you just go back to the chorus that Daft Punk do, it's I'll read it off. I won't torture anybody by trying to sing it in any kind of way or even try to be melodic in any way. But it starts off like a gust of wind. You head me off sometimes. So again, that's someone that can get in front of him, maybe stop him or encourage him in some way. And it's like a gust of wind. You push me back every once in a while. So again, it's like in a relationship. Your partner will be there sometimes to be in front of you and encourage you, but sometimes they'll have to tell you to, calm down and ease up and actually put their foot down and tell you you're being a dick, maybe, or whatever it might be. And again, that comes with, if you're a person of faith, that can come from God as well. You look to God for these kind of this inspiration, and sometimes that will be yes, go and do things, or no, hold back. And again, so like a gust of wind, you remind me there's someone up there. Again, to me, that signifies, the wind is reminding him that God is around him, and that, God, whoever that God is there up in the sky somewhere. And it carries on, who ushers in the air I need to power my sail. So again, it's that air giving him that energy to do things. It's that, the adage, like, the wind beneath my wings. It's, the ability to, lift him up when he needs lifting up, to power him, move him forward. But as the lyrics also say, to sometimes calm him down, stop him, push back on him, say no to him, whatever it might be.
Absolutely. But again, I just wanted to just, bring that up because I was like, man, he really does bring up a really good point, and my notes somehow strengthen that thought, right? Like it really just puts it all together. Another thing that I found interesting is that this is actually Pharrell's favorite song of the whole album.
Oh, really?
Yeah, that's really interesting. I don't know why this one out of all the rest, but apparently this is his. I mean, he's quoted saying that this is his favorite song out of the whole Girl album.
I guess potentially because it does, it comes from potentially that influence of his wife and of his religion as well, which is very important to him and stuff like that. And again, I'm just looking at the track list for the album as well, and it's again, it's not my favorite track, but I guess if you are looking for kind of personal meaning and what might be actually really important to him personally, then yeah, this one's probably going to stand out amongst all of the others. This one in Lost Queen maybe, but yeah, I can see why it would potentially be his own personal favorite track.
What's your number one
from that album?
If you had to choose just one, what would it be?
It would be between two for me. I like Lost Queen, and I like the second half of that track as well, the kind of hidden track in there. But then I also like Brand New as well. I think the second track on the album with Justin Timberlake.
Yeah, that's actually my favorite, is the Brand New.
Great minds think alike.
Absolutely.
All right. So what else? I think that's all of my my notes on the track. Anything else from yourself?
No, I mean, I definitely went through it, and I'm done as well on my notes.
I see you scrunching up those notes. Good stuff. All right. Well, let's get on to some of the latest news, and I will also talk about the new Reebok IceCreams, and then obviously anything you've got as well. We can start going through. So the news in brief. I forgot to mention last week. It completely slipped my mind. If you are a BBC fan, if you are a BBC EU fan, now is the time to get on their website. While this whole kind of quarantine thing is going on, they do have an up to 40% off sale on a lot of items. There's actually some very nice items in the sale. I think from most of them from last season, and now obviously with BBC EU being the luxury arm of the brand, the prices there are not insignificant. So while you can get 40% off, if you're a fan of the stuff over there, get on the website, get in the sales section, and definitely go and check it out. Also this week, so today's Wednesday, we're recording this. I believe it was Monday or Tuesday, the first drop of the pre-fall 2020 release came out. Initially, it's kind of, I think, 6 or 8 t-shirts and hoodies with the BBC Arch logo on the front in various different colorways, as well as an Astro Varsity jacket in a kind of green and cream color, and that's an EU exclusive. The jacket I really like. A couple of the hoodies are in a really, really nice colorway. I think there's a blue one that was really nice. There was if I remember rightly, a black one with maybe pink lettering. Again, really, really nice. But again, it's BBC EU, so you will be paying quite a lot for those items if you do like them. But the first drop is out. Second drop will be, I think, maybe the week after next. They're normally every 2 or 3 weeks, I think, if I remember rightly. We've also seen the release of some of the sneakers that we talked about in the last episode. So the new Adidas Hue collection, which includes a pair of Stan Smiths, a pair of Nisa Highs, some SE Premiers, and some Continental 80s. They've all come out, they've been released, as well as the 0 to 60 statements, which came out again. I think that was yesterday they came out. They've also released some apparel with these basketball shoes. The 0 to 60 statements, I've got to say, they've grown on me a little bit.
Really?
But I don't think I could wear them or pull them off in any kind of way. I'm not an astronaut for a living. I'm not going to Mars at any time in the near future. And I'm certainly not playing basketball, either in my house or outside of my house or on Mars. So I'm not sure I can pull them off. But I have to say, the apparel that has come out, there I believe there's a t-shirt, there's some shorts, and there's a hoodie. I think they are really, really nice. The hoodie especially. I don't quite know how to explain the kind of weird and wonderful colorway that it has and the patterning it has on it. But I recommend people go and check it out. I think you can get them on the BBC website or on adidas.com or probably various other places as well, your own kind of local boutiques and whatnot. But definitely go and check them out. They're, the hoodies and the t-shirts and the shorts are really, really nice. Have you seen the 0 to 60 statements?
Yeah, I really like the design of it personally, but I don't like the colorway. I also don't like the apparel. Like it, it's nice, but it's not something I could pull off, man. It's just not something I could pull off. However, on the new Hue collection that dropped, I mean, again, there's a lot of it that I'm not too keen on. Just like the color schemes are a little bit wild, or the designs are a little bit wild, but I do love the Campus, the Stan Smith, the most out of those in those cream colors that have released, or whatever color that is, and the Nisa High. Even though I'm no longer a high top fan, I stopped buying high tops a while ago. And the SC Premier and the Continental 80. I liked all those three, even though those are models of shoes that I probably would never buy, just because they're just not my style. But I really did like them a lot. And I actually may buy the Campus or the Stan Smith, the Hues that just came out.
Yeah, the Stan Smiths I quite like. It's quite a kind of contrast, because obviously the last 3-4 years we've seen all these kind of crazy colorways, every different version of every different color you can imagine, and now we've got these kind of 4 items released, all in kind of very muted kind of cream colors with pastel shaded kind of laces as well, so a very kind of muted collection. But then you're offsetting that against the 0 to 60 statements, which are, I think 4 or 5 different materials. They're iridescent in certain parts, and people are going to see you coming in those.
Oh yeah, they're very, very, very loud. And you know what? I'll even add something else to the ones that I mentioned, like the plain ones, like the Nisa High, the SC, the Continental, Stan Smith, and Campus. It also seems like they're not your typical regular ones, or even something that he has previously touched on before. It seems like he added something extra, something that we're very familiar within the BBC IceCream world, where it looks a lot more premium, right? Like the stitching and the leather seems more premium. I mean, obviously, without having them in front of me or being able to touch it, I can't really know for sure. But it just kind of zooming in on some of those shoes, like the Stan Smiths and the Campus, I kind of noticed a little bit of different stitching on those very iconic Adidas silhouette shoes. And I was like, man, it seems like they went a little bit extra. They over exceeded the expectation, right? Like, and I like it. That's kind of the reason why I'm thinking about buying them. And they're just super different from the typical Stan Smiths that he has pushed out before. Especially like the ones that came out, I think 3 years ago, the palm trees with Adidas, Stan Smith, and the dollar and diamond ones that came out. It just, again, it looks like the leather is just a step above Like it's just extra. It looks extra soft, like Italian leather, and the
Yeah.
stitching with it for the hue tag, also just some sort of attention to detail, kind of reminiscent of those things that we love so much from the classic seasons of BBC and IceCream, right? Like those little details.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it's yeah, I've not seen them in front of me. I've only seen the kind of images online. And yeah, I don't know whether it's because of the colorway. It's that kind of creamy, buttery kind of color that gives the impression it's maybe a slightly nicer, softer kind of leather, or whether it is just the kind of standard one, as you mentioned, that you get on essentially any pair of Stan Smiths, which we saw with the kind of palm tree ones and other ones kind of since then. But yes, I'm going to try and see if anywhere around here is stocking them at any point, and I'll go and have a look. Probably not going to buy any of them, but I'll go and have a look at them anay.
Did you not like the Letterman jacket for the EU pre-fall drop?
I really liked it. Yeah, the Astro Varsity one, the green and cream one. Yeah, it's a really nice jacket. Really nice.
By far, that item and the rug, the Heart and Mind rug, those were like, if I could, I would fire off on those immediately. Like I've always wanted a Letterman jacket from BBC IceCream. Haven't had the chance to either purchase or resell or when they drop, but if I can, this one would be one for me to definitely jump on.
Yeah, it's a really nice design, and as you say, it's an EU exclusive as well. So designed by Ross and the guys out there in London. Check it out on the website, but if you don't get a chance, yeah, it's got the kind of the current Heart and Mind logo that they're using on the back of the jacket. It's then got, I think, the rocket ships down the arms. And then obviously the astronaut head on the front, on the chest on one side, I believe, with kind of a main green body color, and then cream. Getting them back to front, a green body color and cream arms is what I'm trying to say. And then while we're talking about things we're not going to buy, let's talk about something I have actually bought recently. Now, bear with me as I reach under my desk to pick this up so it's in front of me.
Oh, man.
Oh, God. Right. So, Reebok and IceCream. This is a contentious subject amongst our community and our fellow sneaker collectors and BBC collectors. And I've given my kind of opinion, and obviously also a few episodes back I talked to Jimmy Gorecki about this, who was kind of partly involved in some of this stuff as well, and he gave his opinion on these and the other ones that had kind of come out recently. And he was giving them very kind of positive reviews and talking about how it's as close to the kind of BBC IceCream DNA as they kind of could have got. So obviously I had my initial opinions on this, but I thought I can't really be recording this podcast, week in, week out, month in, month out, whenever it is I do it, and be giving my opinion on these without actually having a pair and actually seeing what they're like. So I think towards the back end of last year, I placed an order for a pair. I found a place that could do pre-orders, and I ordered a pair, and they actually came, I believe it was last week, just before I recorded, so about a week ago. So I just want to kind of briefly talk about my view of them now that I have a pair in hand here. And just, whether they've met expectations or fallen below or exceeded or whatever it might be. So just very briefly, obviously, the original IceCreams are known and beloved for not just the designs and the prints, but also the kind of quality that came with them in terms of the accessories, the extra laces, the shoehorn, the kind of tissue paper that kind of came around them, the brown tissue paper with the pink cone man and IceCream printed on them, and then the kind of iconic shoebox that they came in, or ice cream tub, however you refer to it. And now we're at a stage in 2020 where You go and buy a pair of Hue NMDs, let's say, for example, and you pay, what do I pay? €250 for a pair. And that's a premium, top end, or top of the line pair of shoes, pair of sneakers. And all you get is the same shitty Adidas box that you get with a pair of on sale €50 Stan Smiths or whatever it might be. You don't really get that kind of real premium experience that you might sometimes expect with a real high-end shoe. So this is kind of where I had the fear with these. I'd seen the images of the boxes and stuff like that, and it looks similar. But what I wanted to see was, what was the quality of all of the stuff around the shoe there? It's not exactly there, but it's 90 to 95% there. This shoe, so these, I got the tan diamond and dollar low version. You can obviously get like a mid or high version as well. I got the low version. Obviously they look most like the original IceCreams. And I'm just trying to open the box here while it's sat next to me. And yeah, I was kind of initially skeptical of what the quality of the stuff around the shoe was going to be like. Now, the main difference in terms of the box is, some of the wording is slightly different. There's additional kind of printed things on it, but it adheres 90%, 95% to the original boxes. The only thing that's maybe slightly different is the kind of cardboard that's used around the box. Obviously on the originals was like kind of a corrugated kind of cardboard. It had ridges in it all the way around, whereas this is just kind of completely flat. But you can see there is a really good attention to detail in terms of the lid of the box. So again, you've got a big, thick, sturdy lid. I'm pushing on this lid trying to bend it, and I can't bend it. It's really thick, really sturdy, solid cardboard. But even on the inside lip of the lid, you have the kind of ice cream logos and motifs all the way around the inside of the lid, not just the outside of the lid. So the box itself is really good quality, and compared to any modern sneaker, this is way above and beyond that. And the point I was trying to get to earlier, which I then diverged away from, is I bought this pair. This pair I think cost me €120. Obviously, original IceCreams were even more expensive than that, which is why I kind of feared that the quality would not be quite so good. And obviously, we've got very expensive pairs now where you don't get the quality at all. But for a shoe at this price point, which is essentially half the price of an NMD, around the same price as a Stan Smith collaboration, I'm pleasantly surprised at the quality of the box, let's say. And it's better than shoes that are 2 or 3 times the price. Once you get into the box, you've got this, you may be able to hear it rustling away here. You've got the kind of the paper inside. This isn't, again, it's a slightly different paper. The stuff before was the brown tissue paper with the kind of pink writing and logos on it. This is white with kind of silvery grey logos on it. The paper's a little bit thicker as well. I think it's probably a little bit cheaper, a bit thicker and cheaper. It's not cut quite as fine. It's not quite as tissue papery as the original one. I quite like that though, because the issue I always had with the originals in the paper inside is it would rip quite easily.
Yeah.
Once you get inside, you've got the accessories. So you've got the laces, which I haven't actually yet opened. So I've actually got 2 pairs of spare laces here, a light blue and a dark blue, as well as the tan pair that are in the shoe already. Again, the lace tips, they have the IceCream logo on, which is that extra kind of luxury step I didn't think they would take, that extra attention to detail. There is also a shoehorn in here somewhere. I can't quite find it. Here it is. There's a shoehorn in here. I haven't opened it. This is actually in a sealed cardboard package now, as opposed to the pink ice cream scoop shoehorn you got in the originals, which was inside the kind of see-through plastic, so you could kind of see it. This is in like a cardboard version. It feels... I'm not going to open it. I'm going to tear it open now, but it feels a little bit bigger, in fact. But yeah, it's cardboard. It's got the kind of branding on the outside of the package, but you've got that as well, and they seem to have done it fairly well. And then you've got the shoe itself. So initially, you've got the kind of iconic plastic Cone Man tag that you get attached to the shoe, which if you are a BBC IceCream collector or wearer, you should be wearing and keeping on the shoe itself. Top tip for you. And then the shoe itself, again, it is much, much better quality than I expected it to be. The print is good. The stitching is really good, especially around the ice cream logo or tag on the tongue. The stitching of the Cones and Bones character on the back near the heel is really nicely done. Generally, all in all, it seems like a really good kind of quality shoe. You obviously have the Reebok logo incorporated into this shoe, which you obviously never had on the ice creams. The Reebok logo is visible on both the inside and the outside of the shoe across the main body of it. But it's incorporated in really nicely to the point where you would hardly even notice it, basically. So that I really like. I think they've done that very well. They obviously wanted their branding in there, but they've done it low-key enough that you're not going to overtly notice it. The only area where I think this shoe kind of falls down a little bit, let's say, is the kind of iconic sole of a BBC shoe. BBC, an ice cream shoe, I should say. Now, obviously, on the original ice cream shoe, you had the sole, and towards the back end of the sole, you had the little kind of strange-looking Cone Man character who looked like he'd recently had a stroke or something. He was slightly different to the other Cone Man character that you got, but he is no longer present. Now you just have Reebok kind of embossed on there almost. And then when you turn the shoe over, obviously, the one really big talking point about ice creams, aside from the prints themselves, is the sole and that kind of see-through plastic sole, where obviously when you put the shoes together, you get the kind of the astronaut there in full almost. That is completely gone with this shoe. You just have a very standard plain Reebok sole on the bottom of these. I guess at this price point they've obviously got to find somewhere to cut some costs and bring the price point down slightly. And I imagine that part of the original shoes was obviously very, very expensive to manufacture. Having that kind of printing on the inside of the sole, and then having that overlaid with that kind of see-through plastic, which was also kind of molded in a certain way as well. I'm imagining that's a very, very expensive process, in fact. So that's the kind of one area these kind of fall down. I would have preferred they did something a bit better with the sole and increase the price up to $140, $150 maybe, whatever it kind of needs to be. But all in all, these shoes they are, let's say, beyond my expectations of what they would be like in terms of the design, the quality, the accessories and bits that you get with them as well. I am very pleasantly surprised. I would, for 120 euros, I don't know what that is in US dollars.
Not too far off.
Probably around the same, to be honest. For that kind of price, if you're an ice cream fan and you're one of these people that has been forever saying how disgusted you are that they've done this and how you would never buy them and all that kind of nonsense, I would recommend going out and buying a pair at this price point, because even if you don't like them and even if you are truly, truly against them doing this, for for that price point and for what you get in terms of the shoe and the accessories and everything that comes with it, I personally think you're getting a bit of a bargain, if I'm honest, because I seriously do not think Reebok or BBC are making any real profit on these. Even if they sold them in quantity, I really don't think they're going to be making much money on them because, like I say, just the box and the accessories and things like that to manufacture them. And they're obviously doing it differently to how it was done originally and probably doing it at quantity and at a lower cost. They're still, really, really almost, luxury items again in terms of what comes with them and how they're made, how they're put together. So I would recommend getting a pair. And if you don't like them, then go and sell them or do something else with them. But for €120, I own many more shoes that have cost much more than this that are of lesser quality and don't come with any of these extra bits that you get. So I recommend getting a pair. I recommend trying them and seeing what you think of them. Personally, I'm not a fan of the other version. I can't remember if they're mids or they're highs.
They're highs, and the other trainer ones too. I think they're extremely ugly, and it's a
I'm not a fan of them. With the big old tongue sticking out the front. They remind me of the old kind of like Supra type shoes that like Lil Wayne used to wear. They're not even like an Air Force One high top. They're a bit off. So I don't like them. And obviously we've got the Iversons as well, which I still can't wrap my head around. We've got, I think it's 3 colorways.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, 3 colorways. Yeah, I can't get my head around them, and I don't play basketball. So those are a kind of no-go for me. I'm not going to purchase them. But again, if they come with the same box, the same accessories, all that kind of thing, I think if you do like them or if you are debating buying them, I think you will be getting your money's worth, put it that way. So after that little kind of ramble about what I think of them, I shall put them away. And while I do that, where do you stand on this kind of reissue of these kind of iconic shoes?
I do agree. I do agree that for the price point, I think it's a good purchase. I think it would be a good pickup, but only on 2 colors, right? The colors that the pair that you have, the tan with the D&D logo, right? I think that would be one that I would definitely purchase. And the exclusive Complex Con, the full yellow or banana split or whatever they're calling it now on the internet, that's the other one that I would purchase. Now, that being said, you make some amazing points on, I guess, the box, right? How it's a well-made box, the accessories and this, that, and the other. But again, they're putting 2 iconic shoes together, right? You have in the back of the shoe, you have the iconic ice cream crossbone, and then on the tongue, you have the boutique ice cream patch. So it's the board flip mixed with the boutique. And what I wanted to say about it is that they're starting to put or mix 2 materials that weren't ever mixed before, or at least maybe only in the board flips. The board flips had the suede with leather, whereas the boutiques only just had leather inside and out. Now this new shoe, the 4000, the BB 4000, you get both, right? But again, with some of the designs and colorways of the boutique, where it seems to be have been the focus, right? With the little ice cream man keychain and all the other accessories and shoelaces and stuff like that. I also agree with you. They should have definitely done something a little extra for the bottom, giving it that icy glass bottom finish to like see through some other design. I think that would have definitely kind of nailed this new interpretation. However, for the high tops and the zips or whatever they're called, the zaps, the Iversons, I just think I don't know what the hell they were thinking, to be honest. Like, well, you know, obviously we all know that you and David Travis, aka King of Creams, are good friends, work together. Um, and speak to each other quite often. And when these things were happening, you and I had a pre-production conversation, and I had told you that I spoke to Trav about these as they were dropping, as the information was coming out on the internet, and I was losing my mind. I was like, they're killing the soul, right? That being said, though, I think they could have really nailed it had they been a little bit more reserved on how they were going to go about it. If they didn't do the Iversons, if they didn't do the Zaps or whatever those weird ones are, the Zigs, Zig trainers, that's what they're called, and the high.
Oh, I forgot about the zigs as well. I quite like those actually. That Starfield design. I've got to say, I quite like them.
I think they're ugly, man. Like, and mind you, the camo and the space theme, right? Those backdrops, those colorway, like those are my favorite. Like anytime BBC IceCream comes out with that camo print or that space print themes, I love it. I try to jump on it as fast as I can. But just to kind of wrap it up and not to just rant too much on it, I feel like a lot of these attempts were ingenuine and not organic. And when you get the tan ones, the ones that you have, and the all yellow ones, that I feel those two, I feel those are the two best ones out of all the new collection. It ends up kind of translating as the same thing, that it seems ingenuine. And I think that if only those two colorways and that low top model were just to come out, I think the response would have been different. I really, truly believe that the response would have been different if it was only the yellow one and the tan with the dollar and diamond sign. But because they put out these ugly high tops and these Iversons and the trainers, I think it just kind of got lost. And like you said, it's a very touchy subject for us fans that are, they don't want anything to be changed or redone or. It just seems like Reebok just wants to make a quick buck, and you do make a valid point. Like maybe they aren't making that much, and they should have done the ice bottom. Who knows what the price point would have been? But you know what, Stephen, I saw recently some Reebok classics, right, with an ice bottom, no logo or design underneath that glass bottom or ice bottom, but again, about 120 Americans. So for you, that might be maybe 95 euro. I mean, that's even cheaper, and that has the glass bottom. So I don't know why they didn't do that. I don't understand why they didn't add that key feature. And you know what? I think with the kind of audience that you're trying to sell these to, that the people you're trying to sell these to, I think we'd put up the extra cash for it. Right, for that extra detail. I certainly would. I would definitely appreciate it, and I would definitely pay a higher price for that extra detail. But yeah, I think just to go back to your point, I think I'm going to pick up the yellow ones from the Comic-Con exclusives and the pair that you have, the tan with the dollar and diamond. I think I'm going to add those to my collection.
Yeah, and I think. Yeah, again, for the price point they're at, they're worth copping just as a pair to just wear every day. I think if you generally like that kind of design of shoe and that kind of silhouette, I think you're getting more than your money's worth if you buy a pair of them. But yeah, as you say, it's obviously it riles a few people up, and I know we chatted briefly about this yesterday, and I've probably mentioned this on other episodes as well. I was kind of in two minds when they first announced this, and I'm lucky enough to be in a position whereby I probably knew about this, before 99% of people out there. I know me and myself and David, we saw early kind of prototype images and publicity images 6 months before anyone around the world saw any of them and even knew they were coming. So we've had a long time to sort of look at that and think about them and sort of understand or try to understand why they're doing it. And David even longer so, for various reasons. His own personal involvement there. And I've kind of come around to it a little bit. And again, especially after speaking to Jimmy a few months back about this, and obviously his involvement in this. And we've as we kind of mentioned to each other yesterday, mainly us older heads. Us kind of people that collected season 0, season 1, 2, 3, etc. A lot of us complain about, or I say us, I hopefully I don't tend to, but I know a lot of people do, complain about the quality of BBC nowadays, and it's not like it used to be, and I only buy the stuff from season 1 to 6 when it was made in Japan, and all this kind of stuff. Which I get, I understand. But then at the same time, when they try and utilize some of those classic designs and silhouettes and products that they had and try and reinterpret them to also appeal to a more modern, younger market as well, and also deal with the internal politics that they obviously have at Adidas and Reebok, and there is a lot of internal politics even just between those two companies. Again, people still complain. They don't like it. They don't like that they're redoing this stuff, even though they've just been saying they wish the new stuff could be like the old stuff. So they're almost in a kind of lose-lose situation when it comes to a lot of stuff they do, and a lot of consumers of a certain age and background and all that kind of thing. And I think, as kind of Jimmy said to me a few months ago, they've done, I think, the best they could have done based on that original kind of DNA of IceCream, the original designs and prints and the box, the accessories, the colorways, all this kind of thing. And, we're never going to get an IceCream shoe that looks like the original IceCream from 16 years ago now, just because they were prohibitively expensive to manufacture, and they would be now as well. Times have changed, fashions and trends have changed, no matter how much we like them and we like all those things from back then. Not everyone else does. And also, like I say, just that kind of internal politicking between Reebok and IceCream and the guys at BBC, and issues over licensing and branding and all these kinds of things that have to be taken into account. Obviously, Reebok helped make the first IceCreams, but it was done, the contract was that they were not overtly Reebok shoes. I think it said Reebok inside the tongue in the kind of, the small text in there, and also on the box somewhere, I believe there was a Reebok logo, or at least the stickers, which had the sizes on, had the Reebok logo on them. But other than that, they weren't, Reebok were like, no, we're going to help you manufacture them. I assume, BBC was paying for the majority of the manufacture and design and concepting and R&D. But I think at this point, BBC need Reebok more than the other way around. And to produce these at scale in a cost-effective way, they need Reebok's production. They need Adidas to lean on them a little bit, I think, to actually kind of get them involved and get them doing this. Obviously, if Reebok are going to do this and they're going to stump up some of the production side of things, they're going to stump up some of the licenses for some of the patterns and designs, then, of course, they're going to want some of their branding on it, and they're going to want those kind of Reebok logos on the outside and inside of the shoe. But like I say, it's done reasonably overtly. You don't necessarily notice it too much. I'm just looking at the box now. I don't think there's anything on the outside that says Reebok at all on the box. There is, on the underside of the box, there is a BBC logo, an IceCream logo, and a Reebok logo. And then on the side of the box where you have the sizing sticker, In tiny, tiny writing, you would not even notice it says Reebok. So I think, I don't know what's been paid to make these. I don't know what's been paid for the licensing or whatever, but I think BBC have got a fairly good deal there in terms of, Reebok's involvement and how much kind of Reebok branding is on there. So yeah, like I say, they're in a kind of lose-lose position, I think, to a certain extent with a lot of people. But I think all in all, it's a good shoe. And if you are on the fence about it, or if you're near the fence somewhere, and you've got 120 euros, you need a new pair of sneakers, I would recommend you go and order a pair and actually have them in your hand and see what you think of them. But just bear in mind, these are not the original IceCreams. They will never be the original IceCreams. We will probably never see the original IceCreams in that kind of form ever again. So, I would say buy them, but obviously deal with the fact that you're not going to be reliving your childhood when you get them necessarily.
I absolutely agree with you 100%. I mean, but to that, I'd like to add that, I get that Adidas, bought Reebok back in 2005. And the original boutique BBC IceCream shoe was, it's clear. It was stolen. The design was stolen from the Stan Smith silhouette, right? Like where the stitching is to a certain degree, right? Obviously, the boutiques are way more higher end, but again, the design of it is it's a Stan Smith.
Let's say allegedly stolen,
right.
And let's say highly influenced by the Stan Smith. But I take your point, yes.
But my whole thing is that I really enjoyed the Stan Smith pony hair D&D design that they came out with 3 or 4 years ago, and the same with the palm tree ones. And again, to that point, the pony hair. They had kind of that icy finish at the bottom where the white pony hairs had the red see-through bottoms and the black ones had kind of like a bluish see-through bottoms. Yeah. Obviously no design underneath like the boutiques, but close enough, right? Like there was a lot of things there that made you feel like, hey, this is very reminiscent. And to me, like when I saw them come out, I was fighting tooth and nail with everybody on where can I get them, and I needed a pair of each one that they had released, and I was very happy. I mean, it was like you said, we'll probably never get what we originally got ever again. We'll never see that again, but to kind of get somewhere near it, those releases to me was as close as it was going to get, and I was super happy with it. I was extremely happy with everything that they did with those 4, and I have all 4. And again, when these were coming out, that's kind of what I was hoping for. That Adidas would allow Reebok to have that silhouette design, and bring it back maybe in some new colorways or different ideas, and they didn't. And then when we saw what we saw, I was very, very disappointed. Very disappointed. But again, very valid point. Good price point. You could use those as your everyday beaters instead of trying to flex these very rare grailed retro OG boutiques or board flip 1s or 2s, and keep those nice and fresh and icy in the box in the cooler, as the king of cream says. And like. That's kind of something that I'm thinking about doing, is buying those just so I could wear them on a daily, like you said, Stephen. But again, it's just a shame. It's a shame they have the opportunity with the Stan Smith in Adidas. Like, that's like my question. Why isn't Adidas stepping up to that plate? Why is BBC IceCream, whoever is over there making these decisions, why are they trying to go back over to Reebok? What did?
Because Reebok own the licenses still. And this is why we haven't seen, and this is just my very limited understanding from what I know from certain people. This is why we never saw ice creams again, because of the deal broke up with Reebok, who were due to make all of the ice cream apparel and clothing, which was going to be more of a kind of leisure wear, whereas BBC was high end. The deal kind of fell through. It didn't end very well. It ended very poorly, in fact, the relationship there. But from my understanding was when that agreement broke up, for whatever reason it broke up, and whoever broke it, it meant that Reebok owned the licenses to a lot of the prints and the designs, as well as the sort of silhouette and the moldings of the shoe as well, which is why we're not seeing them in the original form, because I think Reebok owned the moldings, and I think those moldings were then destroyed, from what I've been told. On purpose or not, I don't know, and I wouldn't like to speculate. Probably just the fact that, well, here's a molding from 5-10 years ago, we've never used it, it can go, basically. Which is why, again, why it would be so expensive to now remake those soles of the shoes because that's probably 3-4 different parts that have to be made, printed, put together. Very, very expensive to do. But I think the issue lies with Reebok, and I know that people have been speaking to Reebok for quite some time to ask them to get additional access to certain prints and designs and things like that. Reebok have said no for a long time, just because the relationship was on such sort of bad terms, I think. But now that Adidas own Reebok, and because obviously Pharrell has one of the biggest Adidas deals around, that has allowed them to put additional leverage, let's say, on Reebok. And that is why we have this shoe now, which is a compromise, I think, in terms of using original designs, but also incorporating Reebok branding in a kind of few of these places. So I think this is a shoe that Reebok probably didn't want to make, or haven't wanted to make up until very recently. And I think it's only been made, that's just me speculating, it's only been made because of pressure from their parent company. We have to remember Reebok, Adidas own Reebok, but Reebok is still an independent company in itself. It doesn't have to give licenses or designs or anything to Adidas if they don't want to.
That's something I was going to ask you.
They don't have to do what Adidas tell. If Adidas say manufacture this shoe or this hoodie or whatever it might be, Reebok don't have to go and do that. They are still an independent company. So I think this is some leverage from Adidas. This is some compromise from Reebok, and it's kind of come together, as I've said a couple of times, to kind of form the best shoe that they could make under the circumstances.
Well, that being said, I hope that all these shoes sell out then. And I hope that with all the shoes selling out, maybe the relationship between Adidas and Reebok on this particular, these designs, it starts to loosen up that grip of sour business from the past, and maybe looking forward on making, something even all of us could agree on and all of us could love once more, right? Well, whether
I would love to see to me this is like an ice cream 2.0. I would love for all of these to sell out and for Reebok to go look at it and go, oh shit, we've sold out. These are actually popular. People are interested. Okay, let's do another run. Let's tweak the design slightly. Let's do an ice cream 3.0. Let's invest a little bit more money. We've got the basic molds already. So now let's invest a bit of additional money in the molding for the sole perhaps, or let's adjust the Reebok branding that's on them slightly. Hopefully we see another iteration with another release of the original prints. So, the next one would be the mini Dollars and Diamonds, if I remember correctly. Then we'd go on to Money Rolls, then Beepers, I think in that order. So yeah, I would love to see each of those come out and maybe a slight iteration with each one. And I wouldn't care if that was, 18 months away or a year away. I'd like them to sell well, which is why, I highly recommend people go out there and buy a pair if you're on the fence still. Show that there's interest, and get people at Reebok realizing that, okay, these are popular. Let's keep trying to improve them. Let's take the money from the original ones. Let's reinvest it. Let's tweak them. Let's get the next line out. Then we've got a year or 18 months to develop the 4.0, which is going to be the next print. Then the 5.0, which will be another print. And that's the way I hope it goes. Whether it goes that way, I'm not sure. I don't see these at the moment flying out of the doors of retailers. They've been out for a while now, and you can still get them at most retailers. So they're certainly not flying out the door, but hopefully there's enough being sold that they will realise there is some interest, and we will perhaps see another iteration or another kind of design release at some point in the future.
I mean, this is the first time in almost 5 years, maybe 4 years, that we've seen the classic designs, right? I mean, of course we have like the NMDs that have come in between this gap, right? Where it's the Mind and Heart shoe, BBC, like the Human Race ones, and the Hue version 2 with the blue, red, and white colorway, but it's not the classic Diamond and Dollar or anything like that with the ice cream crossbone. 5 years ago was the Adidas Stan Smiths that I was just talking about, and then now we have these from Reebok. So hopefully there's not this huge gap going forward, but regardless, I am in agreement that hopefully we could make the wait of 18 months or whatever it is for what could be possibly a better design, like a part 3 or part 2, like you were saying, and continue to evolve until we're all happy with the result.
Yeah, and another kind of scenario which I know definitely won't happen, but another kind of potential scenario could be that Adidas purchase the IP from Reebok and own it and develop it themselves. But the issue you've got there is Pharrell, essentially. He doesn't like looking back on the past. He doesn't like revisiting things. So I don't think he would have any direct involvement in it. I don't think, I don't know him. I can't speak for him. I don't think he would necessarily object to it if it was going to help the BBC brand in some kind of way. But I certainly don't see him pushing for that idea or anything. But it's an option that Adidas could do if they saw that there was some potential in it, if they saw there was a way to kind of make a profit from it in some kind of way, which their man Reebok and BBC have to get from this. They are businesses, they have to make money off of these. There's normally quite a lot of margin in sneakers. I know exactly how much it costs to produce a pair of Adidas NMDs, and I know exactly how much they sell for. There's a big margin there. With these, I don't think there is a big margin. But I think if Adidas can see a way of increasing that margin, making a bit of money, helping with their own brand and the work they do with Pharrell, as well as helping BBC, who they also do collaborations with occasionally, and Human Made as well, which is also very tied in there. That could be a way forward, I guess.
No, actually, if anything, I'm starting to think of ways that we could possibly try to push that to happen sooner rather than later. Like if there's a way we could make a petition.
Let's crowdfund it.
I'd be the first one to sign.
I'll set up a GoFundMe page or whatever they're called these days, and if we all chip in a few dollars, few euros here and there, maybe we can approach Reebok and try and purchase the IP from them.
And the comment that you just made about Pharrell, like it's not just him But I have this issue of, and I get it. I get it. As artists, right? We're all artists in our own way. Sometimes we don't like to redo things we already done, or continue to do the things that we already done. We always try to challenge ourselves and try new things and explore new themes and worlds and ideas. So I get that. But again, having such a loyal fan base, right? Like, how do you just kind of let us go, say goodbye to people who have, put love and money, a lot of money, a lot of love.
I think this is the compromise as well. I think Pharrell got rid of most of his, if not all of his shares in BBC, many many years back, and he saw that it wasn't going in a good direction or in a good place. So he worked with his kind of investment partners out in Miami to repurchase a lot of those shares back from Iconics and other places, because he didn't want to just let that kind of brand crash and burn and die a horrible death. And again, I think that's the kind of compromise, because he doesn't like looking back, he doesn't like redoing stuff, but at the same time, he is aware that BBC is so tied into his own personal brand and his own history that he got involved again. But yeah, it's that compromise. It's he still shows up to the occasional BBC thing, whether it's a collaboration event or it's a pop-up store opening, or whether it's Paris Fashion Week and he stops by the BBC EU office. He'll still sort of show up and sometimes represent the brand, but his focus is he's 50-50 in on Human Made. That's where I think his focus is, his kind of priority is, along with his other kind of projects. And I think he would say, sorry, I can't help with BBC. I've done what I can do to help. I've helped kind of resurrect them to a certain extent and bring them back and get them a new location and let them kind of run individually and kind of carry on designing and putting stuff out. But that's sort of as far as I think he's sort of willing to go with it.
No, yeah, I could totally see that. And you know what? It kind of comes to me as an idea of like, sometimes these big brands, they drop the ball, but they also, are very keen on listening to the fans and the buyers, right? A lot of the time they listen to that feedback. And the example that I'd like to use is just Nike in general, right? So the Nike SB Dunks, right? The skateboarding Dunks, obviously in the early 2000s, blew up the sneakerhead culture with these wild concepts and designs, but also Jordan brand, right? Like sometimes they really do drop the ball, and when the fans or the buyers or collectors, when they say something, most of the time, I don't want to say all the time, but most of the time they're listening and they try their best to correct it. Now again, they are a business and it is about making money. So maybe, there are some ingenuine attempts where they're just trying to make the quick flip and make that money on a maybe a overly dropped pair of shoes with just a different colorway or material or what have you. But I mean, I just wish that was the case for BBC, that they would listen to us, wherever it is, whether it be in the EU, Japan, or American markets. I just wish they would kind of just listen a little bit more to what people are saying and try to find that balance in that medium. But you know what? I do see something else here that I know that you want to talk about, which is Brent Pashusky. I'm sorry. Pashke. I apologize if I butchered the hell out of his last name. And Apogee. If you wanted to.
Yeah. So I just had a couple of bits of news to mention. So Brent has teamed up with Apogee, who make kind of instruments and guitar accessories and pedals and effects type things. And he's doing, I think, their weekly YouTube live streams, all about songwriting, production, creation. Obviously, because it's Brent, it's guitar focused, but it does incorporate a lot of other stuff. And what he's doing in each show each week is he's progressing this track that he's making, and he's showing how you can use different tools with GarageBand and an iPad and Apogee hardware to kind of make a track, essentially, to write it, compose it, record it, edit it, all that stuff, almost end to end. And I'm not a guitar player. I can't play any instrument. I'm not musically talented. And some would say not, just generally not talented in any way whatsoever.
I disagree.
Thank you. I appreciate that. But I stayed up until it's 4 p.m. West Coast time. I did put East Coast in my notes. I will change that so that I don't put it in the show notes incorrectly. I believe it's 4 p.m. West Coast time. So for me, it's like 2 a.m. or something stupid. But I stayed up and watched it live last week. And it was really interesting, really informative, really crazy to see what you can do just sat there with GarageBand and an iPad and some effects pedals and whatever it is he's using. So there's another one coming this week. It's so 4 p.m. West Coast time, I believe, on the 9th of April, which is on the Thursday, I think. Yes, Thursday. It's on the Apogee YouTube channel. I'll try and remember to put a link in the show notes, but otherwise go to YouTube, type in Apogee. I think they might be listed as Apogee Digital or something on there. That's their kind of full brand name. But definitely check it out. You can watch his last 2 episodes on there as well. Obviously, I know a lot of people that listen to the podcast, know Brent, love Brent for his, all of the work he does with Pharrell and N.E.R.D and everything. So to actually get a masterclass essentially from him on how to easily record and produce a track is, I know will be of interest to a lot of people. So definitely go and check that out. I also had one other thing to mention, which I didn't have in the show notes originally. Friend of the podcast, Chris Jordan, he has just released a new album with his musical partner, Swifty Jones. The album is called The Toronto Sessions, a 13-track album, only 26 minutes long, so only a couple of minutes per track, really nice to dip into and just pick up here and there. I've had a quick flick through of it. Some really nice beats on there, some really good bars. So, he's a friend of the podcast. Most people will probably know him if they kind of follow us. Obviously, he's at Bush and Paningo on Instagram. So check him out. And go on Spotify, Apple Music, Tidal, SoundCloud, I think it might be on as well. Just, all the usual places. Go and check it out. Give it a listen, give him some feedback, send him some love. As I say, the album is called The Toronto Sessions, and again, I'll put the information in the show notes so you can go and look it up and maybe click the links if I remember to include any of the links themselves.
Yeah, for sure. And I wanted to say something really quickly before we move on about Apogee and being able to use their products and interfaces and items in any program, right? Like you said, GarageBand. And actually, a fellow Pharrell fanatic, Tyler, the Creator, his first mixtape, right, Bastard, was produced on Fruit Loops on FL Studio, but also recorded in GarageBand, right?
Oh, really?
So,
okay. Yeah.
So, I mean, there's a lot of people out there that I know that are always saying, "Oh, but I need a real studio." Well, actually, you don't. You could use what you have, and there's a lot of people out there that did it that way and were able to come up. So, I mean, I'm happy that that Brent and Apogee are doing this and giving people the opportunity with many different platforms and software and hardware as well to get people to produce music or just be creative overall. I think that's really great.
Yeah, and it's, as you said, it's kind of crazy what you can do with even, what some people kind of think of as the basics. GarageBand, you buy an iPad, an iPhone, a MacBook, an iMac, whatever, you get GarageBand in there for free, basically.
Absolutely.
It's a free tool. But yeah, I know people that are professional producers, musicians. They use GarageBand. Up until about a year ago, I used GarageBand. I recorded direct into GarageBand, did all the editing in there for the podcast. You can do all that sort of stuff in there. Obviously, I moved up to Logic Pro, as a lot of people do. If you want to do something a bit more professionally, GarageBand is a great, I was going to say entry level. It's not entry level because it does have a lot of pro features in there. But it's a good starting point, basically. I moved to Logic Pro just because it had a couple of certain features, pro features that GarageBand didn't have, that I kind of needed to make my workflow a little bit easier and to do certain things for me automatically. But I always, whenever I speak to anyone about podcasting or recording anything, I always recommend that, first step, just use GarageBand, get used to all the kind of functions and features in there, because you will see those functions and features replicated in the more pro versions of applications like Logic Pro and stuff like that.
No, yeah, and so, like I said,
it's great. It's great to do, and as I say, you can plug this. You could do it on an iPhone if you need to. Yeah, it's a little bit fiddly, but you can do it. You can do it on an iPad. Brent is sat there just plugged direct into an iPad, and after 2 episodes, he had essentially a whole song tracked on there. And that kind of blows my mind that he can have a professional sounding song after just 2 hours of just putting it into GarageBand and just tweaking it on the go here and there. And, he obviously knows what he's doing, but if you jump in there, you play around with it, you look up how you do certain things and how you get it to sound like you want it to sound. It's doable. If someone as stupid as me can get GarageBand to work and Logic Pro to work to a certain extent and stick out an okay sounding podcast, anybody out there can do it essentially.
I mean, and you know what? I'll say this. If you saw an amazing indie film, if you heard an amazing song, if you listened to an amazing podcast like this one, would it really matter, or would you be super concerned if you ended up finding out that these things were recorded, like the movie was recorded on an iPhone, or if the song was recorded on GarageBand, or if the podcast was recorded on a regular, digital recorder or whatever? I mean, at that point, I think it doesn't matter, right? Like you got what you wanted out of it, and people enjoyed it, and the result is there, right? Like, I think for all you listeners out there who are thinking about doing podcasts or thinking about being directors, whether it be film or music related, or if you want to do music, go out there, check out this Brent and Apogee sessions. And, do whatever it is that you want to do with what you have. Don't let it hold you back. Overcome that adversity. See that challenge and overcome it with what you have. David Dobrik, whether you know him or not, is a very famous influencer on YouTube. He started filming on an iPhone 5, which was one of the crappiest cameras out there. And look at him now. The guy's one of the most richest YouTubers out. I just wanted to just put that out there because I thought it was really neat that you shared that he was doing some of this on GarageBand, and I wanted to share that. I want to make sure that your listeners knew. Don't let these things hold you back. Just go out there and make it happen.
Yeah, definitely. Now is the time to do that as well if you've been considering it. I see all these posts like, while you've got all this free time, learn something new, do a side hustle, all this sort of shit. No, don't necessarily do that. Do what makes you happy and what keeps your mental health and physical health at its best and all that sort of thing. But if you've got the time and the energy and the inclination to want to improve yourself in some way or try to do something new, and you've been toying with the idea of recording something, and you've got a Mac of some kind, just go and download it. You don't need any really fancy gear in terms of microphones and stuff like that, in all honesty, to get started. Just start chucking stuff in it, download. There's so many sounds built into it already. If you want to produce music, for example, so many loops and effects and all that sort of thing. You can easily start banging stuff out just with the basics of what's there. And then, if you've got a bit of spare cash, you can maybe invest in some additional effects and things like that you might want to use, some additional kind of plugins and whatnot. But yeah, with the basics there, just try it at least. Even if you get in there and you realise it's too confusing, it's too much, you don't have the time or whatever it might be, that's fine. But yeah, just go give it a go. You never know what could happen from it.
Absolutely. Maybe, you know what? You never know, Stephen. Maybe one of these days, one of these listeners that heard this episode may have a successful podcast, and you'll be a guest on their show.
Let's hope so. Yes, but also just to that point very quickly as well. You mentioned Tyler and how he kind of started out. Somebody who I'm hoping to kind of get on the podcast at some point soon, who is an OG Neptunes fan. He was on the Star Trek forum back in the day. Almost super producer level now. Nana Rogues, based out in London, who's produced some massive hits for Drake and people like that recently. Back in the day when we were all on the Star Trek forum, if I remember correctly, he was also using like Fruity Loops and cracked plugins and all that kind of stuff just to make these weird, wonderful beats. Because of that Star Trek forum connection, making beats, I think he got a beat to Family. Family rapped on one of his beats. It meant he ended up in the US in studio sessions with Family. I think he also was in the studio with Pharrell at some point. He's had Drake, personally, some of my favorite Drake tracks produced by him. He's doing huge things in the UK, in the kind of the hip hop scene over there, and R&B and reggaeton and everything else in the UK at the moment, and grime and all this sort of stuff. So, he started out that kind of way as well, and he's now doing huge things. So
Look at that.
Yeah, just get out there and do it, people. All right, is there anything else from yourself, anything else you wanted to go through and have a chat about?
I mean, I know that you got the rest of your day to look forward to, so I don't want to keep you for too long, but there are a couple things here. I have a long list of topics and questions, but I think if I just narrowed it down to some of the ones that I think that I really want to ask, that would be fantastic if that's okay with you.
Yeah, of course.
All right. So I guess my first one is, being that BBC IceCream is a brand that we love and we champion and we're very loyal to. Besides that brand, are there any other brands that you've seen, whether they be new or old, that you're starting to gravitate to or that you've liked throughout the last couple of years? Like, for example, for me, I really like the Human Made stuff and Neighborhood, and I'm buying a lot of like Cole Haan shoes and the classics like Ralph Lauren. I'm starting to buy more of as I'm getting older, right? As the gray hairs come in, I'm starting to get a little bit more conservative kind of clothes. But again, Neighborhood, Human Made, CDG, Comme des Garçons. That's kind of like what I'm starting to purchase now and starting to collect and really become involved in. What are some of those brands for you, or if any?
Yeah, I don't diverge away from what most people kind of see on Instagram and stuff like that. Most of the things I buy tend to be BBC IceCream. The shoes and sneakers tend to be Pharrell related in some way. One, because I'm a Pharrell fan, but also the NMDs, the Solar Hues, the Tennis Hues, they are ridiculously comfortable and they're actually nice shoes. But like in my day-to-day life, when I'm at work or wherever it may be, I live in Air Max 90s. Day-to-day, I'm a big Air Max 90 fan. And like yourself, I have a wardrobe full of Ralph Lauren polo shirts and jumpers and stuff like that, which I'll wear if I'm in an office or something. So yeah, it's outside of the BBC realm of things. Fairly simple, fairly conservative. If I've got to be in work or whatever it may be. But yeah, away from there, I tend to just focus on BBC stuff. There are plenty of brands out there that I could get into. I don't actually own any human-made stuff, I don't think. But I think I'll probably start purchasing a few more bits and pieces from there going forward. But yeah, it's for me, it is mainly the BBC IceCream stuff, and not necessarily so much of the newer stuff, but trying to find and acquire the older stuff that's still in good condition, that's still my size, that kind of thing.
Same. Absolutely, 100%. I mean, speaking of other brands and Pharrell, there have been a lot of these very rare, unique, but also very expensive items that I've kind of wish I was able to purchase. One, because I don't have the money to purchase it, and two, it's also very loud, right? It's very creative coming from Pharrell, but again, I don't think I could pull it off. So what I'm talking about is the collaboration between Chanel and Pharrell, like the sneakers, the glasses. I personally wish I could pull it off. And number two, I wish I could afford it. What are your thoughts on some of these other collaborations that you've seen Pharrell do throughout the years?
I generally think they're great. They're not necessarily for me. I'm the same as you. The Chanel stuff, it's not necessarily something I could pull off. It's also, probably out of my price range. I know people that own some of the Pharrell Chanel stuff. Shout out a friend of the podcast, Solution. I know he's got a few bits. But, when I spoke to him when the Chanel stuff dropped, he went to he lives in Paris. He went to the Chanel store the day it dropped. And it was still sold out, like almost immediately. I think when he got there, they had a couple of tops left. Some of the accessories, the sunglasses and whatnot. So that stuff, it still has its own hype around it, but that hype is in a completely different world into which I live.
Yeah.
That hype is for people that, drive cars that, cost the same as what my apartment is, and, live a very, very different life. While I can look at them and I can appreciate them for their design qualities and aesthetics and all that kind of thing. And the fact that Pharrell's doing it and it's another kind of creative outlet for him. Yeah, it's not for me, and you probably won't see me in a Chanel store on a launch day. If I had the money, this may be a different story. But as I say, that's not the world in which I live. But I think it's great that he does these kind of collaborations completely across the spectrum. Ranging from a €90 Adidas tennis shoe up to a multi-thousand euro jumper or jacket or dress or whatever it may be with the likes of Chanel. I think that's great. And it's also it shows what a wide range of influences and skills and creative outlets he has. And again, we see that in the music. He can do a 90s R&B track. He can do a rock and roll track. He can do a hip hop track. He can do a grime track. He can do pretty much anything he sets his mind to, essentially. And it's kind of great to see him utilizing those talents and those ideas to put stuff out to the world, even if it isn't necessarily for me or for the likes of me. It's still great to see it.
Absolutely. And that brings me to my next question. Do you think that, well, we had this conversation in pre-production a little bit when we spoke prior to the podcast, and we talked about the differences between quality in the U.S. market, the EU market, and the Japan market, all the designs that they have and the quality, et cetera, et cetera. And you and I both agreed that, obviously America's BBC designs are lacking a lot of the quality and details and stuff of that nature. So my whole thing is, or my question would be, is what have you liked? I know that we both agree that we both like the golden seasons, right? Like the golden era. But what have you liked outside of that you've seen these entities push out, right? Like for me, I really enjoy when, like, strictly speaking on BBC EU, some of their really weird and limited accessories. For example, BBC's recording label, the EU Sound. I recently got a buddy of mine in England to send me the Alan Kingdom record.
Yep.
That is obviously with all the iconic colorways and designs and of BBC. I wanted to pick that up because it was such a unique item, something that obviously the American market is not doing. But to that point, what have you seen in that kind of similar light that you've liked?
There's a lot of stuff, to be perfectly honest. And I think I've mentioned this on previous episodes as well, the way in which BBC is set up with these almost three completely separate design studios, the US, the EU, and Japan, which is now kind of broadening out into more of Asia as well. But we'll call it Japan for the sake of it. Back in the day, the US kind of controlled everything. The stuff that Japan got and that London got was stuff that was just sent over from the US. They just got it a week later, basically. Then they started to branch out and do some of their own local collaborations, their own local bits of work. While at times it can be slightly frustrating because there are certain bits in other places that I want. And, I can get them if I want them, let's say, but it doesn't always come cheap.
Very true.
I think it's great that they're all out there doing completely separate things, using their own local cultural backgrounds and influences to design stuff. Because if you look at the US, the EU, the Japan stuff, if you put their product lines side by side, they are all completely different. They all have completely different points of reference. They're all sourced and manufactured fairly differently. Obviously, the people working there are all different, all from different backgrounds, nationalities, etc. So it really lends to having very different and eclectic lines, which I really, really like. In terms of specific pieces, there's not a specific piece I can really think of, but there's always something I find from pretty much every season that I like. With the US, it's always hard to say because so many designs are pumped out. Because obviously they have these agreements and licensing deals with other retailers that they have to provide clothing for. So they put out tons of stuff that I don't even realise they've put out because I don't see them in US boutiques or department stores because I'm not there. So that can sometimes kind of throw me a little bit. But then, if I'm honest, they're not always of the best quality and design. Again, because I think they're producing them more for the mass market because they've got these deals in place that they, I think, contractually have to adhere to. But a lot of the stuff the US does, it's exclusive, that's done in store only. There's some really good stuff. I like it more of the accessories they've been doing recently. They're doing more kind of art pieces, with the different astronaut versions and things like that. I've ranted about the release of those on previous episodes. I don't think they've done that particularly well. But in terms of the actual design of these things and how they come about, I think they're great. You look at the EU at the moment, we're about to see an ice cream relaunch. We're likely going to see kind of homeware, cushions, pillows. I've seen, we saw them, they did the couch, the sofa a couple of years ago to, custom order. I think, from what I saw on Instagram earlier, we may be seeing more kind of custom furniture stuff from them as well. I think that's a really great, really interesting way to go. You know, furniture is as much a piece of art as a sculpture is now to a certain extent, and at a certain price point, and in a certain setting and environment. And again, you know, all the kind of weird and wonderful little accessories that BBC EU do. I'm a sucker for accessories. You know, I've got like loads of BBC wallets and all the keychains and little, you know, magazines they produce and stuff like that.
I think I know of one that you and I could both agree on that we want and we would buy if given the opportunity at a good price point, would be the BBC couch that you have on your Instagram page.
Yes.
Man, when I saw that floating around, as soon as I was like, man, I want that thing.
Like, I've got to say, like, I know the boys there. I know Joe doesn't work there anymore, but Joe was part of designing that along with Ross and other people. And I did reach out and ask how much it would cost me, and they gave me a price. And at the time, I just moved into this apartment and was debating a new sofa. And I did have the conversation with my then girlfriend, who I was living with at the time. And I did seriously consider it for a minute. But then that price point was, very hard to justify when, you know, I've got a young kid as well who's, you know, jumping around on sofas. And, you know, I look at the state of my current sofa, it needs to be changed. But you just look at the random things that get dropped on it and spilt on it and kids climbing on it. And I was just like, I don't know. I think my blood pressure would go through the roof if I owned one of those BBC couches, because I'd constantly be on edge about somebody dropping, you know, a glass of wine on it or some bloody spaghetti or pasta sauce on it or something. So
for sure,
yeah, I'd love one of those, but yeah. Well, now that I'm a single man again, yeah, who knows what might happen in the future? We'll see. But I was going to say one piece I do, or a couple of pieces I do really like. The recent re-release of the Swarovski t-shirts and hoodies that the BBC EU have done, and again they're EU exclusives, and they are obscenely priced, but they are lovely and they are really nice. And back in the day, I was very close to owning some of the original Swarovski pieces. I had the opportunity to buy, I think, the Cone Man t-shirt at one point, and also the Arch logo t-shirt. And for whatever reason, I didn't. I wish I had now. I massively regret not getting those when I could have got them. But yeah, again, yeah, if money was no object, I think those recent Swarovski pieces would be a nice addition to my collection, let's say.
For sure. You know what? One that definitely pops out to me is the chains that they came out by Ghost in Japan. Do you remember those?
Yep.
The attention to detail of how these chains come in the iconic ice cream box, just like the whole package. Like, the reason why I brought up that question was I feel that these really weird one-off limited items like the statues, which I agree, I think they're fantastic, the Spacemans, and their collaboration with Medicom and Bear Brick. Mm-hmm. Like these little things, I feel like it keeps that spirit, the heart of why we fell in love with the brand in the first place alive, right? Like these very small details, they really go a long way. That just separates themselves from any other brand. And that's why I wanted to ask you that question. And for me, one of those big, besides the couch, is the chain that they came out with in collaboration with that Japanese artist Ghost. I thought,
yeah, and if I remember rightly, they weren't overly expensive either. I did have a look at the price of them at some point. And I think they were like 120 euros each or something, if I remember rightly. So they weren't overly pricey. And again, that's something I'd potentially get. I have to say, though, I do already have a Cones and Bones pendant and necklace. Shout out Doughboy Meets World that sent me that. With all the kind of different coloured crystals in it, making it up and stuff. But I never wear it. I can't Yeah, I'm of an age now where I can't really pull that kind of thing off, I don't think. So again, while I'd love those other ones, the other chains and pendants, I'm not sure I'd actually ever wear them. They'd just be, hung up in my, I have my own freezer here, which is just, BBC IceCream filled. I think they just hang up in there basically. And now as I get a little bit older, I tend to get a bit more, I guess, picky with what I'm buying. If I'm buying new release stuff, I want it to actually be something that I'm going to wear, as opposed to 95% of the other stuff that I own that is literally just hanging up in my BBC IceCream walk-in closet, basically, and never gets touched.
And I actually have that same problem, and I actually do the exact same thing. Like, if I'm going to buy anything old or new, I try to make sure that it's something that I would wear now and maybe in the future. So more conservative, right? I've actually bought more of the those pocket tees with the very small embroidered logo or design on the pocket tee. It doesn't have anything anywhere of BBC IceCream that's super loud and big and noticeable. I've started to buy things that are just a little more discreet and conservative. So yeah, I'm the same way. And you're right. Like, a lot of my collection is just in my closet, just sitting there. And then every once in a while, a buddy comes over and I'll be able to kind of show off and kind of flex my collection.
Stunt for all of 20 minutes, yeah. And then lock it all away again for another 3 months. I know, yeah.
Exactly.
I know the feeling.
Exactly. Now, I guess my last question that I feel like I really want to ask you, I mean, I have a couple more, but again, I don't want to keep you on forever, is kind of, we touched on, or you touched on and spoke about how bad the business relationship happened with Reebok and Pharrell. And, as I got older, it was something that I started to find out little by little, really doing research on it and really trying to look for that information, right? It's not something that is really, I mean, at least to my knowledge, that is really publicized out there, right? It's kind of like within the know. If you know the people within those circles, they could tell you for sure how things went down. So pretty much, what are your views or thoughts when comparing two iconic producers and designers and, just overall great artists like Kanye and Pharrell, right? And what do I mean by that? Kanye, as we all know, has worked with Nike and a ton of people, but has always had, I guess, a very ugly turnout, right? Like, when he worked with Chanel or Louis Vuitton, it seemed like he had something negative to say about how he was treated or how his ideas were ignored. And that was very publicized, right? Everything that Kanye did, anytime it was in fashion, it was, oh, Kanye stormed out and this and that, and he was very arrogant. Whereas anything that happened with Pharrell, not necessarily that it was hush hush, but you didn't know much about it. So it seems to me that because Pharrell has tried to keep a lot of his business private, his business private, it's worked in his favor. Whereas for Kanye, it has not, right? So the way I kind of see it, these are kind of similar individuals, kind of like the same person. But one is the dark side and one is the light side, kind of bringing in Star Wars here for this one. Kanye is, Darth Vader and Pharrell is, Luke Skywalker, if you'll allow me to make such a comparison. You kind of just see like how things have gone for the both of them. I mean, they were friends and have worked with each other in the past, obviously with Child Rebel Soldier. But how do you view these two icons in fashion and music? How do you see them? Is it very similar to how I view it, as one being a very loud, crazy, arrogant, obnoxious person, versus somebody who is always pushing the envelope and trying to seek another opportunity and making sure that everybody on all sides is happy, even when it's not.
Yeah, I agree with you to a certain extent there. I view them as two very different people who have two very different not work ethics, because they are both workaholics, but views on how they should go about their work. And this isn't just something that happens to them or in fashion or anything. Yeah, you could go work for one company down the street, your manager will treat you in a certain way, your colleagues will treat you in a certain way. You could go to another company which does something similar, makes the same product or whatever it might be, or is, I don't know, maybe another software company, whatever it is, and you'll have a completely different working culture, completely different manager, completely different colleagues, and it can be the kind of polar opposite. But what I think with the difference between Kanye and Pharrell is Pharrell takes a slower, more rational kind of approach to his design work and his collaborations. He's also a bit more hands-off from what I understand. He will present ideas to Adidas, but I feel they're presenting more ideas to him and to his team at I Am Other. It's a lot more collaborative. There's a lot more back and forth. There's a lot more talk around the concept, the branding, the bigger picture, the story, all this kind of thing. And I think once him and his team get their points across, they let Adidas go away and work on it, and then come back and say, here's what we've got. And then they will say, yes, no, or change this. And they have that kind of iterative process until they get to a point where they both meet in the middle, basically. With Kanye, it's very different. Kanye is very hands-on. He's in control of everything he does. He's in control of everything that's going to have his name on it. We've kind of seen that, he left Nike essentially because he couldn't have his own way, because there was, he felt, I think, there was too much pressure being exerted from other parts of the business that wouldn't let him have the budgets he felt he needed, or wouldn't let him produce the designs he wanted to produce, which is what attracted him to Adidas, because they were just like, okay, we're slipping behind Nike. We're, I guess, kind of more interested in his kind of star power, as it were. And they were like, here's your budget, go crazy. And, he is the man that is in, we've seen him, out there walking around empty buildings in Chicago, sourcing where a new factory might be. We're not going to see Pharrell doing that for his line of stuff. He's going to say, Adidas, what do you have for me? You go away and make it, please. You're the experts. But Kanye wants to be hands-on with everything. He wants to know how his item is made, from design and concept to how it actually gets delivered and gets put on the shelf, and how it is displayed in a store. It would not surprise me if he is checking what when his shoes go out to certain boutiques and things like that aren't Adidas owned, that are just Adidas resellers or clients. It wouldn't surprise me if he is asking Adidas to find out how they're being displayed, how they're doing the raffles, how they're picking people to own them, what they're selling them for, what type of customer they're going to, all this kind of stuff. He just wants to be hands-on. He wants to own everything from end to end, and I think that's just his way of working. I've worked with both those kinds of people as well. I've worked with people that are very hands-off, let you get on with whatever you want to get on with. Now, I've also worked with people that want to micromanage and be involved in everything and know everything and be in every meeting with you and stuff like that. And I think it's just different styles of working. I think obviously Kanye's is obviously much more intense, but I think that's his personality type anyway, and that kind of can work in his favour. It can also work against him when things don't work out quite so well. But you look at what he's doing at Yeezy. they are turning over stupid numbers still.
It's crazy.
Still just massive numbers. Yeah, a lot of the hype has kind of died down. There's not necessarily people queuing out around the block for them nowadays. Although here in Helsinki, we've got like 2 stores that have Yeezy accounts, and if it's a drop of a new type of silhouette, you'll still get people queuing down the street for them. There's still raffles that go on for them and things like that. Yeah, he's still churning out stuff. He's still churning out. I've seen a lot of the stuff recently, the last couple of months that he's putting out. All these like weird and wonderful designs that I would never even imagine in my head, and I would certainly not be able to pull off or wear. But yeah, people are still queuing up, still buying it, still turning over big numbers. So yeah, he's obviously doing something right out there. But like I say, I don't know what his kind of staff turnover is, because Yeezy itself is run as an independent business, whereas the human race hue type stuff that Pharrell has doesn't. It's a sub brand under Adidas, and Adidas just run it. Whereas Yeezy is run as a separate company basically, which just leverages Adidas to help manufacture, make, market, distribute, etc. I don't know what his day-to-day working practices are, what his staff turnover is, and all that kind of thing. But he seems to be making it work.
Yeah, for sure.
And like I say, it's the stuff that he puts out isn't necessarily for me. I don't own any Yeezys. I've tried many a pair. David has a surprisingly large collection of Yeezys as well. People probably don't quite realise. And I've seen some of the really rare stuff that he's got and tried them on, and they're not really for me. And then again, the clothing line, again, it's not super high end, but it's a bit more high end in terms of the pricing that I would really go for. And again, the kind of design of it all isn't really kind of for me either. But he's doing what he does in his own kind of special way. It seems to be working at the moment. Whether that kind of hype will die down or whether he'll decide to transition into something else, you never quite know with him. But we will see.
Yeah, the reason why I worded that question so bizarrely, and obviously the comments that I had made prior to you answering the question, is just kind of seeing how these relationships have been shared publicly on Kanye's side, how it's affected him, right? I mean, again, he still makes money and he's still successful in everything that he does for the most part. But again, had he maybe conducted business or not shared or made so public a lot of these things, I personally think maybe Virgil may have still been with him, right? Maybe there would be more people that would want to jump on the Kanye train. I mean, again, this is a comment that I'm trying to make hypothetically prior to him going to Adidas. It's kind of, to your analogy on working at one business and then going down the street to a similar field in another office. There's different, cultures, but also to that point, I wanted to add is that, you don't always, or you shouldn't always or ever speak badly about your old employer, right? How does that make you look, or just speak bad about somebody within your field that maybe, because whether you're in architecture or music or this, that, and the other, sometimes these networks, these circles, they're small, right? So people talk and people, information gets around. So for Pharrell, being that I'm sure he's had a lot of bad stuff happen to him in business, but it's not so well known to the point where it affects him wherever he goes. When an opportunity arises, it usually, I would assume, comes from maybe stories of how well or easy it was to work with him as an individual for design. Whereas for Kanye, it seemed to always be somewhat of a nightmare. So I kind of wanted to see how you broke it down, but you made really great points, man. And I loved what you said. One last one.
And just one more very quick point. I get exactly kind of what you're saying. My only kind of follow up to that would be the world in which Kanye, Pharrell, these kind of huge A-list celebrities live is a very different world to which I live. Now, I wouldn't go and necessarily badmouth an ex-employer, but when you're someone like Kanye, who, whether you like him or don't like him, is one of the biggest, most famous people on this planet at this point in time. You could go to any country on this planet, people will know who Kanye West is. When you're that big, you can kind of get away with it to a certain extent. Yeah, it's not always necessarily the right thing to do, but we all know that Kanye kind of speaks from his heart, I guess, doesn't necessarily always think about what he's going to say first. And this is what I always say to people that talk about Kanye and talk about how they don't like him, or they think he's a dick, or whatever it might be, or he said this awful thing, or this thing, or this thing. If you go back and look at anything Kanye has done, anything that's controversial that he's done, any statement he's made or thing that he's done, he's always done it with like the best intentions. He always has really great ideas, really great intentions, but he just doesn't really know how to articulate himself properly. He doesn't know how to get that idea or that thought out in a calm, measured, sensible approach. He just blurts it out, to the world, for the world to hear. And if that was any one of us, then people would be like, "You're a dick. You're never going to work again," But because of that level of, I was going to say, infamy, or his level of fame that he has, he can kind of get away with it to a certain extent. Do I think he should do some of the stuff he does? Obviously, no. Should he shoot his mouth off and stuff like that? I kind of partly love him for it, because I'm a huge Kanye fan. I partly love the fact that he speaks from his heart, but it is mildly frustrating that he doesn't really seem to be able to articulate it properly, or in a kind of well thought out way, and that's kind of the issues that he's had when he's left certain design houses or collaborations or companies. He's left them because he has felt he has been wronged in some way if people don't want to work the way he wants to work, and he kind of takes it very personally, I think, again, which I think is probably a very personal insecurity type thing for him, and his way of dealing with that is to just blurt it out, because he knows he has this voice that people will listen to. But what he doesn't realise is the stuff that he actually is saying isn't always necessarily the right way to kind of say it or go about it.
And I agree with everything.
So that's all I kind of wanted to add to that,
I agree with everything. And, I just want to make it very clear to the listeners and to you, I'm a huge Kanye fan myself. I just acquired my holy grail of shoes in my shoe collection, which was the first Nike Air Yeezy 1.
Nice.
I've been wanting that shoe for forever. I finally got it. So it's not to say that I'm bashing him or against him, and just like,
and I didn't mean you personally. I meant in general. I
just wanted to make sure that from what the comments I made that the listeners knew, but also too, like that the same things that you said. Like I also like that he is very unapologetically him. I like that he speaks from his heart, right? And he has no filter. However. Being that he's this genius and we love him for those little characteristics, there seems to be that he lacks that balance, right? Like where it's like, yes, speak from your heart, always be you, never apologize for being you, but it's not good for business to talk bad about your old employer or the people who you've collaborated with. But I loved your response and what you added. That's awesome. That's awesome. All right. So last one, this is just a little bonus question for fun. Maybe you've just talked about it before or answered it before, but just in case, if you haven't, if in a perfect world, you could have Pharrell produce or collab a song or an entire project like an album with an artist, dead or alive, who would it be? And you could go ahead. I'll also throw in there that you could maybe do a repeat. Maybe you'd like to see another Justin Timberlake album, or maybe another Snoop Dogg album. I know Travis loves that. Or Jay-Z, Mac Miller, Michael Jackson, whoever. Who would?
Yeah, hands down, I've got an answer immediately. There are two artists. Yeah, I'd love to see a Michael Jackson project and a Prince project. Basically, I think those would be, at least the Prince side of things, would be one of the most weird and wonderful, eclectic musical experiences ever potentially. I think a project with Michael Jackson would have been amazing. I think Justified was obviously an amazing seminal album, but I would love to have had or experienced Michael Jackson on some of those tracks as they were kind of initially intended to do, and then even more, because obviously a lot of the Justified stuff did actually happen in the studio. I think the concept of the album and some of the music was originally created, and they had parts of it and they had Michael in mind for it. But obviously you then have all the stuff that happens in the studio, and I would love to have seen those first few tracks with Michael, and then what they could come up with in the studio as well, kind of off the cuff, as it were. I think that would have been amazing. I think it would have been a potentially classic Michael album. And then anything that could have been done with Prince. Again, I think if Pharrell was there, and I don't mean just Pharrell, I think you'd have to have Chad in there as well. I think if they were in whole N.E.R.D mode, where they're fusing everything together, and you had the likes of Prince involved in something in a project, I think it would be spectacular.
Absolutely. I agree 100%. And I actually didn't even think of those two. I mean, even though I threw it out there as for Michael Jackson, that wasn't like my original, like who I'd go to. But you're right. I think those two artists, had Pharrell and Chad, even Shay, been a part of making a new album for those two artists, it would be something forever to remember and to bear witness to such a great art piece, right? Because that's what it would end up being, right? It's not just going to be a project; it's going to be an art piece. Like collectors, like you must own the album, whether it be vinyl or CD or whatever. But yeah, you're right. Like those that would definitely be something very interesting for the whole world. Had that been an opportunity to come to fruition. For me, it would have been mostly live, people who are alive. So I would like to see another Snoop Dogg, Pharrell kind of collaboration, Justin Timberlake, Jay-Z, and one that maybe a lot of people wouldn't even think of, Gwen Stefani. I would really like to see another kind of comeback album for No Doubt, with N.E.R.D helping with concept and production on a new No Doubt album. I think that would be really nice. I grew up with a lot of ska music and obviously all types of music. I'm a huge music fan, but I really, really miss that old ska, like No Doubt kind of feel, that what is it, Sublime and Real Big Fish kind of feel, and that California vibe, the 90s vibe. I kind of miss that, and I would love to see Pharrell and Shay and Chad get in there with No Doubt and try to figure out something interesting. Those are the people that I would want to hear.
I thought I did hear a rumor recently that he potentially might be working with Gwen again this year. I can't remember where I saw it or where I heard it from, but there was a rumor at least that she was thinking about recording something and he may be involved in some kind of way.
Well, it looks like I have my homework to do for the day. I'm interested now. I'm hooked, man. I'm hooked.
And I was just thinking while you were kind of mentioning your ones, I'd like to see a Jay-Z project, Eclipse project. But then what I just kind of suddenly thought of was the Maybe remix, where he talks about the only artist he's not worked with, Tupac and Big. Now I would again, something with those guys, whether it's kind of in the form that they were in the 90s, or whether that's had they still been with us, whether that was the artists they are today. And I imagine it would probably both be very different artists as to what they were in the kind of early to mid 90s. I think that would have been really, really interesting as well. Because again, I think I don't think I've ever mentioned this on the podcast, but I remember, I can't remember who I got the information from, but I believe in the kind of late 90s, this was after Tupac had died, they were putting together one of the kind of posthumous albums. And again, I can't remember who it was that told me. It was somebody that was working on the album, maybe. But yeah, they were kind of putting together the beat. I can't remember which album it was. It was one where like Jazzy Faye was involved and stuff like that. And they had reached out to Pharrell to try and get some beats from him, I think, or to try and give him some of the acapellas and say, can you work with these? Can you do remixes to them and stuff like that? And he was initially interested, I think, and then it just never came to any kind of fruition or anything. I don't quite know why, but he was kind of, I think, partly interested back then in the kind of, I guess that was probably around 2000 or the early 2000s or whatever. So I would love to have seen what would have happened there as well.
Yeah, you know what? Now that you bring it up, you're right. Like I would have loved to kind of see where that would have gone. That would have been definitely very interesting. Biggie style and Tupac style with a Pharrell sound is definitely something quite intriguing.
Because I think, like those two as artists, as they kind of evolve musically and personally, had they not been killed, I think they would have evolved into something similar to the Clips, Push or Mal, or the Locks or Jadakiss, or someone in that kind of mould. And I think the stuff Pharrell would have bought would have been similar to what he bought to those guys, and I think that would have potentially worked quite well.
Do you think that that some of these artists would have most likely taken a direction similar to Jay-Z and how he has kind of evolved as an artist, as an adult, right? Like he's not talking about drugs necessarily the same way or the same kind of things. It's very business mindset, this black excellence, right? This his achievements, right? Do you think that would have been something that Biggie and Pac would have kind of gone into?
Well, you'd like to hope so, at least. Yeah. You'd like to hope any artist kind of grows and improves and adapts and whatever it may be, in terms of their creativity and their output over time, and as they get older and as they have relationships, get married, have kids, etc., no matter what their kind of status in the kind of music or celebrity world is. And as you say, Jay has done that very well. And he has definitely grown and progressed as an artist. And we're seeing that with Tyler at the moment, As I mentioned, I've mentioned many times, never been a big Tyler fan, but that last album was absolutely immense. It shows like how far he's come on, both personally as a person, in terms of his content, his writing, and then the ability in terms of his writing ability, his composition ability, his production ability, all that kind of combined, and we're really seeing that with him. And I would like to think, with Park and Big, you would see a similar thing. And I think they were, again, already so big in the 90s, when they died, that they would have only have got bigger and gone on to kind of bigger and better things. And they would be at that kind of Jay-Z level, you would hope. They would hope as they got older, they would get smarter and, adapt to being older and, kind of move into this whole kind of business world, not just be about the rapping and the beef and all that kind of thing. We were starting to see that with at least with Parky, seemingly was trying to get away from Death Row. He kind of they'd set up Death Row East, but he was trying to move away from that. He had Euthanasia Records that he'd just set up, a couple of months before he died. He was going to try and get off Death Row and, have his own independent deal. And so, who knows where that would have gone. Yeah, man.
It's a shame that, outside of those two tragedies, what a lot of the artists throughout the last, 20, 30 years, whether it be to an illness or an overdose or more violence, right? It's a shame that we aren't able to fully see what would come of these individuals artistically. But yeah, man, that would definitely be interesting. A Pharrell Biggie album or project, man, that would have been really cool to hear and to see. And I really wish it was something that was real.
Yeah, I don't think I would ever have liked to have sat in the business meetings between Pharrell and Diddy, arguing about what was working and what wasn't, and what beat was good and what was bad, and Christ, that would be intense. Let's say, I know when they've worked together in the past already, obviously without Big, but with Puff. From what I've heard, they've been quite intense studio sessions. Puff is a very intense kind of guy, and again, certainly isn't afraid to give his opinion and push people that little bit kind of further.
Absolutely, man. To be a fly on that wall, just to hear what's being discussed, I would give anything for that. I would give anything for that. Well, Stephen, again, I still have more questions, but I know we've probably gone pretty far.
This is probably the longest podcast I think I've ever recorded, I'll be honest. Forever, but it's been good. It's been good.
I could go forever.
Keep those questions, and then you are more than welcome to jump back on at any point in the future, and we can carry on where we've left off.
Thank you so much, man. You know what? This was a real pleasure and an honor, and thank you so much for the opportunity. Finding out about you through the King of Creams and through Doughboy and various other people, I'm so glad that I have continued to see the content that you're putting out there for all of us, right, in the community that we're in, and keep up the amazing work and the hard work that you're doing. I know that if you do get paid for this, it's not much. This is probably something fueled purely on passion and love, and I want to thank you. It doesn't go unnoticed for everything that you do, and thank you again for having me on your podcast.
Well, no, I have to say, thank you for the kind words, and no, the pleasure is most definitely all mine. This podcast is all about bringing our strange little weird niche community together in some way, and letting us all kind of express our thoughts and feelings, whether they're kind of good or bad, on all of this sort of stuff that we love. So the pleasure is most definitely mine. But on that very positive, humbling note, we will round it off. You can find the show notes, hopefully, if I remember to do them, and all of the other shows, if you want to stream them, on the website, theothers.net, obviously Others with a Z. There may be some more stuff coming to the site soon as well, so keep your eyes peeled there, but I'll announce it if that happens. You can find the podcast itself on Instagram and all those places at Others Podcast. You can find me everywhere at Steve R. Penny. And Julio, where can people find your good self?
You can find me on Instagram at Saint July, SaintJuly. And do you mind if I give a couple shout outs?
No, go for it.
I just wanted to quickly shout out the Sixth Letter, King of Creams, Doughboy, Lish Rodriguez, and of course you, Stephen Penny.
Thank you. Very kind of you. And shout out to all those guys. But yes, let's wrap it up there. Links in the show notes, all that stuff. Find us online. And find Julio online. Go give him a follow. All that stuff. And that's it from me for this week. And hopefully I'll speak to you next week. Bye-bye.